environment. How important is that? Because I think during the pandemic, of course, we try to stay positive and say it's not about where you train, it's how you train, right? At least that's the mentality I wanted to take with this, because we really didn't have much of a choice at the time, right? But what I did notice, or what I do notice, is that certain gyms, when the environment is just not conducive to what you're mentioning right now, feeling inspired, feeling like you just want to go and train, how much of that can impact training just on a whole? I don't know if you've experienced it personally, if you have any insight or input on that.
Well, again, being brutally honest, coming from a leisure centre, I came from zero environment. Like, I mean zero. I then even moved to training out of a little private studio that had essentially very similar equipment to what I had in the leisure centre. It was just basic, had dumbbells, had a barbell, had a squat rack, a leg press. And again, I was training out of the private studio myself. There was not a single person around me. I had my own music. I had me in there, and it was up to me whether I wanted to give it my all in the sessions, or the fact that I didn't have another bodybuilder around me shouting at me. I would either let that get to me and just pretty much not put what I needed to put in to progress forward. Now, don't get me wrong, that's another thing as well within the Ultraflex gyms that we have around as well. In Ultraflex Durham, there's not a super big bodybuilding environment. Right now, I don't believe there is any actual competitive bodybuilders that is going to be competing. There's been a couple over the course of the past more so like 14, 15 months. But if you go to somewhere like Ultraflex Rotherham, you are looking at 90% of their members being competitive bodybuilders, seasonal bodybuilders, IFBB pros, WMBF pros, DFAC pros. You would say that's the bodybuilder's dream to train out of. But what you have to also remember is environment's always good until you don't have it around you. It's what you do when you don't have it around you, because these bodybuilders don't come home with you. They don't stay with you. You see them for a couple of hours per day, you see them train, and that's perfect because they can push you in the gym. That's totally fine. But what happens when you go home, when you feel like a sack of shit when you get home and you're like, you don't have them shouting at you one more, you don't have them shouting at you, telling you to get that spoonful of chicken and rice in that you don't want to eat, is what happens when you don't have anything around you. Because I really feel that in this day and age, especially in the modern day bodybuilding industry, if people never had environment, I think they would crumble. And that's been the biggest thing for me of what I've been able to really gain such a strong mindset from is growing up with essentially zero environment. Because I'll always say it, like whenever I train out of Ultraflex Rotherham, like it's amazing. I've got all the boys beside me, I've got lots of bigger people, so many more stronger people than me, and seeing that is inspiring, because you really think like, shit, like I need to up my game, like I've got to push on harder. But I was brought up with none of that. I think one of the biggest things is really focusing on being able to work around nobody, because as cringy as it might sound, it is always about what you do when nobody else is watching or when you've not got anybody else around you. That's really where I think the determining factor is of you being able to take that next step up the ladder, or really just staying where you are because you're complacent because you've got 10 other bodybuilders around you.
My question to you is, though, when you didn't have that environment versus now you have access to that, did you find yourself having to do a little bit of extra work to get yourself into the session, or is it similar now regardless? One is just maybe more of a gift than the other?
Yeah, I would probably say right now is more of a gift, because I go into the gym now and I've got access to all of the equipment under the sun. Like I've got access to the best brands. I've got access to literally Prime, Cybex, Hammer Strength, Nautilus. There, you name it, like there's literally everything. Whereas when I was training with literally no environment and next to no equipment, I had to deal with a barbell, which I had no clue whether it was a stiff bar, a powerlifting bar, a deadlift bar, whatever it was. It wasn't aesthetically pleasing looking. All the plates were not the same. There was so many different things. So I think now it's a gift that I do have that, and I am really blessed to be able to go into the gym every single day and have that. But when I never had that, again, it came down to me either switching on and just getting the job done, or going in and being like, right, I'm just dragging my feet again today. Like I really don't want to be here. I've got a really big thing for negative mindset and negative vibes just in general. And as easy as it is to say, I don't work well around negative mentalities. And the unfortunate thing is I came from an area that was very small, like it was very small, and the more so you were surrounded by that more so small town mentality of it wasn't really too positive. I had probably a handful of people, and I could say just one handful of people around me who I would get positive vibes from, and they were the ones that I would stay close with. That was the hardest part at the start, because from like a really young age, as in like 16, I had to really decide whether I was going to isolate myself away from all the negative vibes and not even surround myself with just positivity, because that's not really possible. But just switch off from all that and really just decide, right, this is what I want to do. If I really want to do this well, if I want to be able to look back in 5 years and not have that feeling of regret that I should have maybe knuckled down a little bit harder, then I need to do this. And I think because at the same time, I also knew that I really did only have access to this sort of stuff. So it was a case of make it work or just don't do anything at all. I made it work every session. And don't get me wrong, like I went through hundreds of pretty shitty sessions that were probably, I would look back at them now and think like, what's going on in that session? But at the time, you make it work. I improvise and you make it work.
I really appreciate your transparency with this, and I can relate for sure. When you say pretty shitty sessions, can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so I mean, there's going to be days where you go in and it's going to be all sunshine and rainbows. There's going to be days where you go in, it's going to be freezing outside. You're going to go into a gym that's not going to be heated. You're going to go into a place that you've not got access to a lot of stuff, and you could jump on something and taking on board how unpredictable weight training is. Now, this is something not a lot of people really do talk about, on how unpredictable weight training is, because you could go in and you could feel hellish one day. You could feel really bad, and immediately when you feel really bad, you're going to think to yourself, this is going to be a bad session. But you could go in and you could have the best session ever. You could have the strongest session ever. You could have just a successful session. Immediately that's going to change your mood. You could go in one day and feel fresh. You've had the best sleep, you've got all your food in, your stress management's under control, and you've took a rest day beforehand, so you should actually be fresh. And you go into the gym and you could have the worst session ever. So these are the things that we have to take on board. I've had multiple days where I've went in and weights have felt 10 times as heavy as what they have normally felt, and I've been like, what's going on here? Like, this is terrible. But it's in them sessions that you have to make it work, because if you don't, and this is also a problem with the modern day fitness industry again, and the logbooking side of things, because if you allow that first exercise to take over your head, that it's feeling horrendous, you're not going to progress on it, you're not going to lift as heavy as what you normally do, you'll just crumble, and that session will go completely to the side. If anything, people leave the gym. It's a very disheartening thing to not be able to obviously lift what you have been lifting, but at the end of the day, it's a very unpredictable industry in terms of training, and we have to take on board that our body's not going to be feeling 100%. If anything, our body's not going to be 100% the whole year. We're always going to be at around 85-90% for a minimal amount of time, and then we're probably going to be working at the 50 to 75% throughout the full year, because at the end of the day, you're breaking down your body. It's never going to be 100% fresh for the full time that you're going to be obviously training. I faced multiple bad days in terms of things maybe feeling a lot heavier, me probably not lifting anywhere near as close to what I was used to lifting, but it was just a case of, right, this is what it is. Like, I used to watch loads of things, and I used to always watch obviously all my top favorite bodybuilders would say about how we're not always going to have the perfect training session. Some sessions are going to be really good, some sessions are going to be really bad, and it is what it is. We just either decide to move on from the bad sessions, we see light whenever it's still dark, or we allow that to take over and you let the whole week's worth of training sessions suffer because you've immediately moved across to that negative mentality because one session's maybe not been as good as what a good run of sessions have been.
Do you do deload, or what's the difference? First off, what's the difference between deload and devolume for the listeners?
Okay, so essentially you could look at deload as a couple of different things. Deloading could mean you could drop off a percentage off the weights that you use. Essentially still maybe train at the same amount of intensity. You could maybe train within a rep in reserve or 2 reps in reserve, just to maybe not completely fry your central nerve system.